Greetings, citizens. Hey you, hey friend, welcome back. And if you're new here, hi, welcome to my channel and welcome to Hallowstein. Hallowstein is my 2020 Halloween series on my YouTube channel, and you've made it to our very last video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm happy that you found me. I found you. We found each other. I would love it if you haven't already, if you would join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out new videos every week, both true crime and beauty related, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you. Do it. Do it. So if you are new here, what I normally do on my channel is a thing called Morbid Makeup, where I tell you a true crime story while putting a pretty little face of makeup on, a twist on a classic Get Ready With Me. But since it's Halloween, I wanted to put a twist on what we've already twisted. What I'm doing is telling you the story that inspired a supernaturally charged popular horror movie that was, wait for it, based on a true story. Dun, dun, dun! And instead of beauty makeup, I'm going to be going ahead and throwing on a little Halloween look that hopefully will be easily replicated by you if you are so interested in doing so. And guys, can you believe it's our last Hallowstein video? This is the last one. Halloween is in like 2 days, and it was a really fun ride. I really enjoyed doing these. You guys commented saying that you could tell I enjoyed it, and you seemed to enjoy it, so for that, thank you. You made this a really fun experience for my first Halloween series ever. So for the last Hallowstein video, I wanted to end the series off with a bang. So we're going to be discussing arguably the most popular haunted house story that was ever turned into a movie, in at least my memory and my mind, the most popular one, and that is the Amityville Horror. Is there a more popularized or polarized story of a haunted house that's based on a true story in existence? I don't think so. So let's go ahead and just get into the story that inspired the movie. So come, gather around my campfire, children, for the last time, and let me tell you the terrifying true story that inspired the Amityville Horror. So, our story begins with a pair of newlyweds. George Lutz, born January 1st, 1947, making him a Capricorn. His new bride, named Kathleen Lutz, born October 13th, 1947, making her a Libra. Complete with Kathleen's 3 children from a previous marriage named Daniel, Christopher, and Missy. The 5 of them, complete with a cute little dog, a happy little family was made. The new family stands outside a beautiful 6-bedroom house, complete with a swimming pool and a boathouse overlooking the water. The house is on the water. It's gorgeous. A sign hangs out front of the new house that says High Hopes. This is exactly what the Lutz family had for their new adventure and their new life and their new home together. But unfortunately, this dream home of theirs would turn into a nightmare. You see, once the family had walked the home with the realtor, once they had seen all there was to see, and once they had learned that for some reason the asking price of this house was so low that it was miraculously actually in their budget, the hammer was dropped on them. I mean, at this point, the family had already fallen in love with the house. Kathleen could probably picture her kids playing off in the yard while George is out in the distance fiddling in the boathouse, and the realtor, in a very sneaky and a very, good at her job way, waited until they fell in love to drop this hammer. The asking price of this house was so low because just a year prior to the Lutzes looking at and falling in love with this house, there had been the tragedy. You see, the tragedy had taken place on November 13th of 1974 when 23-year-old Ronald Defeo Jr., or Butch, or Ronnie as his closer friends and family called him, he stalked the halls of this 6-bedroom farmhouse and murdered every single member of his family while they slept in their beds. Every member. His 43-year-old father, Ronald Defeo Sr., his 42-year-old mother, Louise Defeo, his 18-year-old sister, Dawn, his 13-year-old sister, Allison, and his 2 little brothers, 12-year-old Mark and 9-year-old John Matthew Defeo. After these murders, Ronnie, he entered a bar. He ran to a bar and he entered this bar that he frequented in quite often that was down the street from his house because, you see, Ronnie had a little bit of an alcohol and a drug problem. Anyways, this bar was called Harry's, and upon entering, he shouted, "Help me, I think my mother and father have been shot." So, people from the bar mobbed on over to the Defeo house, and this is when they found the entire family dead in their beds on their stomach, shot to death. And I hear it was a gruesome scene. I never looked up the crime scene photos because, I don't know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I didn't on this case, but I've heard that it was intense. I don't like seeing kids, so I didn't look it up, but I'm sure they're online. I'm sure you could if you want to. So it looked like all of his family had been killed when they were completely asleep. Nobody woke up to the sound of the gunshots of the other family members. And when they questioned Ronnie, he told the police that his family had connections with the mafia, so they could have hired a hitman to try to kill his family. So they put him into protective custody for a period of time, but when they started looking into that, they realized that it was kind of bullshit, that Ronnie had been lying, so they then questioned Ronnie, and that's when he pretty much immediately cracked. He admitted that it had been him who had killed the whole Defeo family, all 6 of his family members. Then Ronnie was arrested, and he gave a lot of conflicting stories for what actually happened that night with his family in November of 1974, 75, 74, 74. But the narrative that is most popular in the story, and the one that was used at court and is generally believed, is that Ronald Defeo had voices in his head that told him he had to murder his entire family or he himself would be killed. Ronald even said that the night of the murders, a woman had appeared to him covered in black shadows and had actually provided for him the murder weapon that he then used to kill his entire family. However, people didn't believe this. The jury did not believe this. Even though there was a psychologist that appeared and evaluated Ronald and did believe that he was insane, he was found guilty regardless of all 6 murders. And he is still in prison to this day, actually. I looked him up last night. He is still in prison. Ooh. So this case is very popular and it got a lot of controversy and people had a lot of questions. They wanted to know what would Ronnie's motive be to murder his entire family. And what the theory was is that he went through the house one by himself and shot each member in their bed. But the thing was, why did no one wake up to the sound of the gunshots and why didn't anybody run and hide? They were all found laying face down on their bellies, shot to death, as if they had slept through the entire thing. They ran tests on the family because they thought, oh, they must have been drugged. That's why they didn't move or hear anything. But no, they ran tests and the family wasn't drugged. And additionally, none of the Defeo's neighbors heard anything either. The only thing they heard that night was the Defeo's dog barking and not the gunshots. 6 gunshots from a giant gun. It was a big ass gun, which would be pretty impossible. Like, I'm going to put a photo of the gun here for you. I probably did a second ago when I said big ass gun, but it'd be pretty impossible for the neighbors not to hear anything except for the dog barking. Like, how loud is this dog? I don't know. Louder than a big ass gun, apparently. So, did something supernatural happen that night that caused Ronald Defeo Jr. to kill his entire family and also cause like a vacuum of sorts that sucked all the sound in so that nobody could hear anything? Was this supernatural presence the reason that 6 months prior to the murders, Ronald Defeo Sr. surrounded the outside of the front of his house in religious statues? And when his friends asked, yo, bro, why so many religious statues? He said, to keep the devil out. Or was good old Ronnie just tired of his father being abusive? Because this was not the first time that Ronald Defeo Jr. had pulled a gun on his father. In another altercation, they had gotten in a fight and he had pulled out a gun and he pointed at his father and he shot it. But it jammed and it didn't shoot any bullets. But if that was the case and he was just mad at his father for being so abusive, why would he kill his entire family as well? And also, why did no one hear it? These are the questions in this case that are controversial. Anyways, this is the story that the newlywed Lutz couple heard, and after discussing amongst themselves, they decided houses don't have memories, so they chose to move in to the Long Island house at 112 Ocean Avenue. So the family moves in, and just to be safe, after the recommendation of a mutual friend, they decided to enlist the help of a local Catholic priest to just come and bless the home, which is probably a little bit silly to them because neither of them were religious people, but I mean, you can never be too safe, you can never be too sure. So they called this guy over to bless the home. So the priest is walking around the house doing his little blessing, and he comes upon this one particular room that would later be used as a sewing room for the Lutzes. And when he entered the room, it was unusually cold. Like, it was already winter in New York, but it was colder than is normal for the time and the location. And he noted this. So he thought that it was an eerie and different type of cold, but he shook it off and he's like, okay, gotta bless this place. So he starts, sprinkling his holy water around. And this is when the priest felt a slap across his face, though there was no one there, and he heard a deep voice say, "Get out." So what did he do? He got the fook out, mate. He booked it. He hightailed it right out of there. On the way out, he quickly was like, yo, don't use the sewing room as a bedroom, but didn't say anything else, and then just left. He was like, I gotta go, and just go. Good luck though. Later, once he was able to collect himself, he said that he noticed that he had blisters on his hands that came out of nowhere and were completely unexplained, and that these burns represented stigmata, wounds that correlate with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ himself. So a few days later, the priest was like, you know what, I need to let them know what happened. I need to let them know not to use that room altogether. Not just not to use it as a bedroom, but just to like stay out altogether. So he tried to call the family, and when he tried to call, the phone was filled with static and he couldn't get through. Now, I don't know why, if it was so important, he didn't just like drive over or tell them before he left, but this is what happened. Anytime he tried to contact the family, the phone was filled with static, and you know, driving over was too much of a chore for this priest, so he didn't. So why didn't the priest inform the Lutz of what he experienced the day of? I really don't know the answer to that, but it doesn't matter that much because the family would soon know what that house was all about themselves. And when I say soon, I mean the very first night. So the haunting started night one with a mysterious knock on the door at 3:15 in the morning, but when George went to answer the door, there was nobody there. But things would quickly escalate in this house. Like, things moved super fast, and that's one of the things that is so interesting and well known about this particular haunting, is because this is one of the only cases I've ever heard about where the family was pretty smart, because they left right away. They were like, I'm not putting up with this haunting bullshit, and they pieced out. Once the haunting started, the Lutzes only lasted 28 days in this new home. In less than a month, they had moved in and moved out. So again, it started small, but along with George hearing somebody knock on the door at night, the family would hear the front door slam shut, which is a noticeable and recognizable sound, but the problem is the door was closed and locked. So where did that slamming sound come from? George started waking up every single night at 3:15 a.m., and this is generally believed to be the time of death of the entire Defeo family. So, developing insomnia and freezing, and I do mean freezing because for whatever reason, no matter how often the family burned wood, and they were burning wood daily, all day long, they could not get their house warm. They would even find themselves walking through pockets of ice-cold air all over their house at different times of the day. But anyway, grumpy, insomniatic George found himself stalking the hallways of his home at night, and this is when he noticed that his family was developing a really unusual sleeping pattern. His whole family had taken to sleeping on their bellies, and this is something that they had never done prior to moving into this house, and it's particularly creepy and noteworthy because all of the Defeo family had been found dead on their stomachs as well. In addition to that, which, to be honest, that in itself is already so creepy, there were other weird things that would happen to the family as well. Kathy started having vivid and intense nightmares, and in these nightmares, she said that she was basically, like in her dream, she was dreaming of the Defeo murders, and it was sort of like she was walking with Ronnie as he killed each family member, and she said that it was so vivid that she could actually tell you in which order the family was killed, even though she should not have known that. So Kathy and her boys, in, you know, typical haunting fashion, they would start to levitate out of their beds at night. The boys, their room, they shared the room at the top where the two like eyeball looking windows were. Well, those windows would open and slam shut by themselves at night. And the boys' beds started to completely lift off the ground and slam down back onto the ground at night. And when this would happen, George and Kathy would hear it and they'd want to go help, but they were being held down in their bed by some invisible force, so they had to just lay there and listen to their children cry, which is so sad. Poor babies. In addition to their bed lifting up and down off the ground at night, the boys reported seeing a shadowy figure appear in their room, and it wouldn't be up against the wall the way you would think a shadow would be. It was in the center of their room, levitating with no feet, just staring at them. Was this the same shadowy figure that Ronald Defeo Jr. saw? I don't know. But it would just hover in the center of the room, freaking the kids out. So even though things got more intense in the house at night, the haunting wasn't kept strictly to the night, and they did have experiences in the daytime as well. During the day, the sewing room, you know, the room where the priest heard the disembodied voice tell him to get the fook out, well, during the day, that room would fill with flies for no apparent reason. They would do what they could to get rid of them, and then a few hours later they would go in the room again and it would be filled with flies again, and they were able to determine the cause. They would do what they could to get rid of the flies, but then for whatever reason they would be back in the room, swarms of them, and they were never able to determine the cause or the origin of these flies. The family also discovered that the porcelain toilets that they had in their house would change from a white to a dark black, and they would have green ooze come out of the walls and out of the floor. Was this ectoplasm? Maybe. I don't know. No one knows. That's the point. The Lutzes also had a couple of strange animal-related occurrences while living in the Amityville house. First, the family's beloved dog. Well, apparently this little pup wasn't doing too well in this house either. One day, the normally calm dog freaked out and bolted for no reason. The problem is the puppy was leashed up at the time, and when he freaked out, he tried to jump over a fence, and in doing so, almost hung itself to death. Luckily, George was outside and went and cut down the dog and rescued the dog, but he almost accidentally killed himself, and no one knows what he was afraid of. It was something that no one could see. Additionally, the family owned a lion statue, and apparently, reportedly, this lion statue would just appear out of nowhere, and one day it bit George on the leg, okay, and so they then took it and they put it outside. They're like, no more Mr. Lion, no more in this house. So they put it outside, and the next day when they woke up, it was back in the house, but no one had brought it back in the house. It was just teleporting around. But the weirdest of the animal-related hauntings in the Amityville universe is that, okay, the Lutz's daughter, Missy, you remember Missy Lutz. Well, Missy had an imaginary friend. This imaginary friend's name was Jody, and it was a friend that Missy didn't have prior to them moving into the house. She developed it while living in the house. Developed this friendship while living in the house, right? Well, Jody, this cheeky little whippa, this entity was able to present itself to little Missy in lots of different forms. Sometimes as a little girl, sometimes as an angel, and sometimes as an evil demon pig with red glowing eyes. Scary stuff. Sometimes the pig would be a little cute little pig, and sometimes it would be as big as a house with glowing red eyes. And what troubled the family the most about this pig is that the pig would talk to Missy, and what it would tell Missy was that it was going to make sure that Missy stayed in the house with it forever. And that is just simply not what you want to hear your child telling you, that it has an imaginary demon pig friend who's telling her that it's going to make her live in the house forever. That's not what you want to hear. Nobody wants to hear that. Missy wasn't the only person that could see Jody, however, because one day George was out working in the boathouse when he looked over at the house, and when he peered up at Missy's bedroom window, he saw a giant pig with red glowing eyes staring back at him. How creepy. So, when her children started to get physically harmed, I think this is when it was kind of like the last straw for Kathy, you see, because one day she walked into the boys' room upstairs, and when she walked in, she saw the window. So they opened like this, they opened up and down. She saw the window fly open and then slam shut on her son's hand. No. After this happened, the boy's hand was so badly hurt that it was disfigured to this day. But strangely, there were no broken bones in the young boy's hand. So, one night, the family got so desperate that they decided they were going to cleanse the house themselves. So they got together, they grabbed some sage, they started burning it, walking through the house like, please, evil spirits, please get out of my house, right? But while they were doing this, they heard in a sing-song voice, several voices at one time saying, just stop. Something about that phrase is so creepy to me because it sounds irritated, like, just stop. And I hate it, and I hate to hear it. So, on January 14th, 1976, George and Kathy Lutz scooped up their 3 children, scooped up their family pup, and got the hell out of 112 Ocean Avenue, leaving all of their possessions behind. They got in the car and put the hell house and its creepy eyeball windows that made the entire house look like a damned jack-o'-lantern. Well, they put that in their rearview mirror and they got the fook out and never looked back. So the Lutzes have never come out and said exactly what happened on their last night in the home. I've seen different things, but from gathering what I could from the book and from the many movies on this case, it seems that whenever they did that blessing where they were trying to bless the house themselves, things went from bad to worse, and things are already pretty bad, right? The Lutzes have said what happened to them on their last night in that home is far too frightening to think about or try to relive, but it was bad enough that they left their perfect little fully furnished dream home that they had just bought, and they never went back to that house. So news of the haunting got out, and who would contact the Lutz family? No other than Ed and Lorraine Warren, our favorite paranormal investigators ever. So they got in contact with them and they asked for the Lutz's permission for them to go and, you know, investigate the house, look into it, see what they could find out, and see if they could help. So the Lutzes agreed, and the Warrens showed up at the house with a couple other people, a camera crew, some friends, and they decided to have a little psychic slumber party in the newly empty Lutz / Defeo / Amityville haunted house. My hands look good, right? Is that distracting at all to anybody? So they all showed up hoping to get some proof of the supernatural entity that was terrorizing the Amityville / Defeo / Lutz family home, this haunted ass house, right? So a man who had come with them that was a bit of a skeptic, he all of a sudden doubled over in pain, grasping his chest because there was pain in his heart, and it was said that the house was filled with a really thick and intense depressing energy. So the team set up a motion camera on the second floor of the house, hoping to catch anything when they're not there to see it. So they set up this camera with a motion sensor, and most of the photos that they got from that upstairs camera produced nothing. But there was one camera that produced something very, very interesting and spooky. One of these photos show a boy, okay, a boy with glowing eyes poking his head out of one of the upstairs bedrooms, kind of like trying to see what was going on outside of the room. And they caught this on camera, right? And all the people that were there said there were no kids in the house at the time that this camera caught this photo, and the Lutzes had already moved out. And what's really creepy is that if you look at this photo and you look at a photo of John Matthew Defeo, looks like John Matthew Defeo, bro. I will say that. I don't know how they would have faked that. I mean, I don't know what the technology was like back in the 70s, but it looks like the dead Defeo boy, it does. So what's even creepier about this photo is that after catching it, you know, the Warrens went to the Lutzes and they're like, ooh, look what we found, and they show them the photo. And while they're with the Lutzes, they show it to the daughter, Missy, and Missy says, what do you think Missy says? Oh, that's Jody. No, that's not what you want to hear at all, is it? No, it's not. The pig monster, demon, best friend, Jody. So with the news of this haunting, people became obsessed with the house. People would show up in flocks, just hoping to see the house or to kneel on the ground and pray. And they would try to, you know, take the ground home with them as a souvenir. So with this case's popularity, it was then and still is a highly polarizing case. There are people who believe the haunting story wholeheartedly, and there is evidence that they used to back up their claims, such as the fact that the house was built on top of an ancient Indian burial ground, or that a witch by the name of Ketchum had lived in the house prior to the Lutzes and had practiced witchcraft and was obsessed with demonism, demonology, things like that. There was also a house that once stood on the Lutz property, but is now, okay, so this is what happened. There was a house that was there, and the family had the house like lifted off the ground and moved down the street, so it's still in the area, but they moved it supposedly because of the haunting activity that they experienced in that house while it was on that plot of land. Could be true, but of course, none of this can or has been proven because you can't prove this stuff. It's just about what you believe. But of course, you can't prove that it's not true either. That's the whole point. And the Lutzes did take a lie detector test and they passed. So do with that what you will. So initially, the Lutzes stayed in the area and they gave interviews here and there and kind of told their story a little bit. They've always been the type that were a little bit secretive about what happened to them, but eventually they got tired of the media and they wanted to get as far away from the house as possible, so they moved to California. And since they have both passed away, Kathy passed away in 2004, and George following her shortly after in 2006. And apparently there have been no reported hauntings from any of the owners since the Lutzes. The address of the house has since been changed, and the iconic like eyeball windows at the front of the house that made it look so creepy have been changed as well to stop the looky-loos from showing up and harassing whoever's living there now, which, I mean, if I was living there, I might lean into it actually, but that's just me. And that, my friends, is the story of the Amityville horror. What do you think? I know there is a lot to unpack there. It's such a crazy story, and I remember learning about this when I was just a kid. Like, I think it's one of the very first haunting stories I ever even heard of, and when I found out it was based on a true story, I was like, whoa, you know? I need to rewatch it soon. It's a fun little watch. It's something that's on my list to watch for, you know, the month of October, because I watch a horror movie every day in October, because that's the person that I am, because I'm a basic-ass bitch like that. To be fair, I watch horror movies not every day, but like all the time, but in Halloween I get extra spooky, because it's the time. Right? So I don't know, guys. What do you think? Do you think that it was actually haunted, or do you think they heard about what happened with the Defeos and they were kind of like, it would be very, very easy to make people believe this house is haunted. I don't know, because it just seems like such a pricey lie, you know, like, yeah, you convinced all these people that this place is haunted and they've believed it for years, but you also lost a perfect house in the process. I don't know. I really don't know. But what I do know is that it's a very fun and scary story, and I thought with it being such a popular story and like the most popular haunted house true story of all time, it would be the perfect video to end our Hallowstein series on. I can't believe it's over. It feels like it came and went so quickly. When I was like, oh man, I don't even know how to say it. Like, when I was doing the research for it, it felt like it was so far away, and I was like grinding. But now that it's here, it's just come and gone so quickly. And I had so much fun with it. And from the feedback I did receive, it seems like you had a lot of fun too. And I'm just really, really glad that you enjoyed it, because I really enjoyed it too. You got to tell me what your favorite one story was out of all of the stories. I think my favorite is The Exorcism of Emily Rose, last week's video, dude. That one actually legit freaks me out. It's probably because of the performance in the movie, and I can connect that in my brain, but something about that story scares the crap out of me. And if you've ever looked up the photos of Annalise Michael, and if you've ever looked up the audio tapes of her exorcism, it's horrifying. They're all scary, but that one just gets me. And of course, you have to let me know which look was your favorite, which, by the way, this is the look we went with today. Duh. I wanted to go for sort of like a 70s inspired Chelsea Grin, like if Twiggy had been the Black Dahlia, like that kind of vibe. And I mean, I think I like it. It was a struggle. This one was one of the more irritating ones to do because this eye look did not go how I wanted it to go. I still think it turned out pretty cute. What do you think? I like it. I like all of them. I think my favorite was Corpse Bride. Oh, I have never felt hotter than I did as like a full ass blue bitch. I wish I could paint my face blue every day because I felt so pretty, but you'll have to let me know what your favorite is. But anyways, guys, that completes this video, and that completes Hallowstein 2020. Please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell, because I put out new videos every week, both true crime and beauty related, and I would love to hang out with you. And of course, please let me know down below of any true crime cases you would like to see me cover now that we're going back to our normal content. But anyways, guys, thanks for being here for my first ever Halloween series. You made it so special. It was such a fun time, and I'm already excited to see what happens next year and just kind of see what the future holds for us in this little channel, because they've made it really special, and I just want to thank you for that. Gotta let me know what you want to see next Halloween, because I've got some ideas, but of course you have great ideas and great taste, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So let me know what yours are, and maybe we can incorporate that in for next Halloween. We have a lot of time to figure it out. But anyways, guys, that's it. You're tight, this was tight, and I hope to see you in my next video. True crime content coming in hot.